Chapter 11. When Israel was a child, then I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more they called them, the more they went from them. They sacrificed unto the Baalim, and offered to the graven images. And I taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by their arms. But they knew not that I healed them. I drew them with cords of a man, with bands of love. I was to them as they that take off the yoke on their jaws, and I fed them gently. He shall not return into the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king, because they refuse to return. And the sword shall fall upon his cities, and shall consume his bars, and devour them, because of their own counsels. And my people are in suspense about returning to me, and though they call them upwards, none at all will lift himself up. How shall I give you up, Ephraim? How shall I surrender you, Israel? How shall I make you as Admah? How shall I set you as Zeboim? My heart is turned with me. My compassions are kindled together. I will not execute the fierceness of mine anger. I will not return to destroy Ephraim. For I am God, not man, the Holy One in the midst of you. I will not come in fury. They shall walk after the Lord, who shall roar like a lion, for he shall roar, and the children shall come trembling from the west. They shall come trembling as a bird out of Egypt, and as a dove out of the land of Syria, and I will make them to dwell in their houses, saith the Lord. All right, let's go back up to verse 1. Last chapter, yesterday we left off with the king of Israel being cut off at the morning, and this is God is going to take away now your king, this one you've set up over yourselves to rule you instead of God. He's going to cut him off, and we're going to pick up in verse 1 of chapter 11. When Israel was a child, then I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Now this single verse right here has been used and construed, but it plainly says, when Israel was a child, then I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. And this would be in reference to the first generation that was led up out of Egypt by the law, by Moses, who was the servant of God who brought the law. And the children were brought forth for a purpose now, and this purpose would be to let the world know that there was a God through their righteous acts, and they would go forth and inherit the promised land. Verse 2, the more they called them, the more they went from them. They sacrificed unto the Baalim, and offered to graven images. And these that called them would be those that was doing right, those that was right in obedience to the law of God, and those that were prophets prophesying at that time. And these would be those that did what God said, and these would be blessed in understanding and wisdom, and they would be the others would be the examples. And all this that we can see is those that do call. But now the world still sacrifices unto their Baalim, these Lord images, and their graven images. These images they have in their own mind of just what God is. 3. And I taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by their arms, but they knew not that I healed them. Ephraim is these double-fruited. God used in referencing them now to a child, and these that he brought up out of Egypt being children. Egypt is that land of snares, that land of holes, that land where the children were trapped now by the laws of men. 4. I drew them with cords of a man, and with the bands of love, and I was to them as they that take off the yoke on their jaws, and I fed them gently. And these cords of a man could be the symbolism of the ways, or these laws of man, but it's in reference of a cord that he's drawing them with, like unto salvation. And I was to them as the one that take off the yoke out of the jaws, and this yoke is in the jaw would be more like a bit, that which they're steered by. And he fed them gently, and this feeding gently would be through understanding. So this is the way God was, see, unto them. But 5, he shall not return into the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king, because they refused to return. Because they did not consider God was doing these things, that it was God who was causing this. But God says he shall not return to the land of Egypt, this land of enclosures, but the Assyrian shall be his king. And this Assyrian is progress, or the Asher, or the step, or the altar, that is the alternative altar, because they refuse to return. And this, they are a witness now in the world. They have been made a witness because they do these things. See, God said he was going to set these witnesses, and that's what their purpose is. 6, and the sword shall fall upon his cities, and shall consume his bars, and devour them because of their own counsels, because of their own words. Their own words have become a snare to them, because they have made many words, and through many words now is your counsel made known. And this sword that's we're talking about here on his cities, these places where he set his guards, this sword is going to be the word, and this word is the law. And he shall consume his bars, these bars being that which he is using to make his prison house, these rules, his laws, each one a bar in a prison. But the law is going to devour them, their rules and their laws, because theirs are made known. Why? Well, they have perverted it, and they use it for gain. And this is proven by their own counsels. 7, and my people are in suspense about returning to me, and though they call them upwards, none at all will lift himself up. And these that set the example, now that they're few in the earth, because it's just not done. People are just not being obedient to the law. It's been thrown out the window. They all have gone astray, and now we will find that the transgressors are reaching their full, because none will lift himself up. None will come up. None will try to do better. They still chase after all the evilness of the world. They give in to it one way or another. The world has almost forced you to this. 8, how shall I give you up, Ephraim? How shall I surrender you, Israel? How shall I make you as Admah? How shall I set you as Zeboim? My heart is turned within me. My compassions are kindled together. God is angry. God is getting greatly angry. Ephraim, how shall he give you up? How shall he surrender you, O Israel? Israel is those nations now that have been scattered out among the earth. They're everywhere. They forgot their heritage. Ephraim, those double-fruited, are the witness of them. How shall I make you as Admah? And how shall I make you as Zeboim? These are the two cities, along with Sodom and Gomorrah, that God destroyed. Why? Well, he destroyed them for many reasons, but above all, most of the reasons were their practices now of and these rituals they would have. We're going to find how God surrendered you. He lured you. He became a snare. There became a snare unto you. I will not execute the fierceness of my anger. I will not return to destroy Ephraim, for I am God, not man, the Holy One in the midst of you, and I will not come in fury. Well, but see, God used Ephraim. Now God set him as an example that you could see what not to do. He's like the drunkard now who's made himself drunk, and you see him staggering around and all drunk and falling down now. Is this how you want to be? See, and this is the example that's being used. God says, for I am God and not a man. Once again, God making you know and understand he is not a man. God is not flesh. God is not a man like you are. He is the Holy One in the midst of you. And this, we're going to find now, this Holy One is God himself. He is the Spirit now that is within us, this understanding that God has given this through the grace of the law. has made himself known. 10. They shall walk after the Lord, who shall roar like a lion. For he shall roar, and the children shall come trembling from the west. The west, because they've been in captivity. They've been in captivity, and they shall return towards the sun, towards where the enlightenment comes from, towards God himself. Because God's going to roar. See, God's going to roar like a mighty lion. And we remember the lion, it was used as an example of great power and strength that comes suddenly and tears and leaves. See, God's going to roar like a lion through his law. He's going to make this example of the end time and roar. The second time now, God's going to make this great example. And we're going to find out that he's working it now. 11. They shall come trembling as a bird out of Egypt, and as a dove out of the land of Assyria, and I will make them to dwell in their houses, saith the Lord. And we're going to find out they're going to come trembling on a highway that's going to come up out of Egypt, out of this land of enclosures, out of this land where people, where men have made these enclosures now. These are not what God set up, but what man has established, and the laws of man. And the only thing we find is these laws are made for gain. They can't stop. See, they can't stop making these laws for gain. Even if you go and say, hey, you're making these laws for gain, see, because God's got his hand in it. God's caused this thing to go astray. It's become its own entity, its own demon. And now God's using it against you. Why? Well, you went astray from the law of God. In Assyria, this progress, everyone's taken in it. This altar even, this alternative altar, God's going to bring you up out of there. See, God is going to bring enlightenment into the world. God's going to pour out understanding and truth and make all these things known. And then God shall make you to dwell in your house, saith the Lord. For this is the promise in the end. See, but they didn't consider the end of the things, and they thought they could get away with this forever, robbing the people, taking advantage. Did you think that God was just going to let you get away with that? Well, you're wrong. The end's come for you. The end's come now on the exactor. All right, we're going to move on to chapter 12.